Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're here with another discussion video. Full disclaimer, this one is shooting from the hip. We're going to have a completely organic debate about an aspect of Star Wars that we're both very passionate about, myself and the Archivist who is joining us yet again today. Thank you so much, my friend.
Oh, I'm so glad to be here again.
So today's topic is one, like I said, that myself and the Archivist disagree on pretty heavily. We literally just found this out about 10 seconds ago. The lightsaber skill and technique of one Darth Vader compared to the technique and the skill of Darth Sidious. Now, a lot of this stems from the fact that there's a duel in the timeline that occurs in the Works District mere days to perhaps weeks after Vader's cybernetic reconstruction and after he has defeated the Jedi Master Krek and Fala, who took upon himself the Barash vow and has essentially claimed his first Sith lightsaber for his own. So this is one of the rare instances in the lore where we have an actual lightsaber lesson from Darth Sidious that he is imparting upon his new apprentice in Darth Vader. Now, as fans of the channel will know, we absolutely love lightsaber techniques, lightsaber lore, lightsaber dueling, more than almost any other aspect of the lore. So when we get a chance to see these two powerhouses go head to head, someone like Darth Vader, someone like Darth Sidious, just mere weeks after the events of Revenge of the Sith, was a really big treat in canon. Now, a little bit of the fan reception. Darth Vader loses this duel, and he loses it pretty handily. Palpatine's whole thing here is, again, a lesson, which, again, is another rare aspect of the lore. We don't really get to see Palpatine teaching Vader very much whatsoever, and it's even rarer for Palpatine to teach Vader something having to do with lightsaber combat. So, for that reason, this part of the lore is really significant. So, Palpatine ultimately wins the duel. He defeats Vader by using the Force to throw objects at him. And the lesson that he is imparting upon Vader here is he's attempting to break the way that he fights as a Jedi. And he's attempting to show him that you need to learn to fight as a Sith. You need to learn how to fight manipulatively. You need to learn how to use your environment around you. He's hearkening back to the lessons of Darth Bane, who says that honor is for the dead. So he's attempting to teach Vader that it doesn't matter if you win a duel honorably. The Sith care very little for honor in that respect. We only care about results and power. So that's the lesson. But at the same time, you have someone like Vader, who is built up in the lore as an absolute unit of lightsaber combat, and he's essentially big dogged by Darth Sidious. Darth Sidious really puts him in his place in this moment. Now, here's where we get into the debate. It is my opinion that past this point, Vader will evolve drastically to the point where blade to blade, he is the superior to Darth Sidious. That is my, own opinion based on the lore. The Archivist is going to have a very different opinion, and I'll let him talk in just a second here. But I think that Vader takes this to heart, and his battlefield experience with the Jedi after this point really elevates Vader. He's put in a pressure cooker to hunt down Jedi, and it becomes his obsession to prove his superiority to the Jedi, specifically at the lightsaber. And I think that he does that. And I think that a lot of Darth Sidious's lightsaber accolades are more secondhand comments. A lot of it comes from the Darth Plagueis novel, where we get a little bit of background on Sidious's lightsaber training, but not a lot. Darth Plagueis sort of denotes him as a master of all 7 forms of lightsaber combat, but at the same time, just like Palpatine, Plagueis never really put a ton of emphasis on that. Where, on the other hand, Anakin put so much emphasis in lightsaber combat and was obsessed with it nearly instantaneously, so much so that it concerned a lot of the Jedi. So that was a really, really, really long-winded way of saying I think that Vader is a better lightsaber duelist at his peak than Palpatine. So what do you think, the Archivist? What are your thoughts on the events and the subtext surrounding this duel, as well as how these two Sith Lords will eventually evolve? And why do you disagree? Why do you think Palpatine is the superior duelist?
So I'm looking at the comic right now. I decided to go ahead and pull it up so I could refresh my memory about it. And you're absolutely right. This is very shortly after he gets Master Kira Kinfala's lightsaber. And Sidious's whole point to this is, like you say, he just says the Sith lightsaber is supposed to be a symbol of the fire of the Force that is in flames beneath them, and it's supposed to be a symbol of how powerful and how brightly their powers in the Force burn compared to Jedi and compared to their enemies. And then he does the thing about flinging all the objects to defeat Vader, which is, interestingly, something Vader learns from and adopts into his style, as that becomes one of his signature moves, using it against Luke on Bespin. But when it comes to Palpatine's lightsaber skill, I have a hard time believing that at both of their peaks that Vader would be able to surpass him, just simply because of what we've seen Sidious be able to do. And I feel like that if they were to fight again, Sidious would probably still defeat him, because we've seen Palpatine sit for years without actual hands-on practice. He was Chancellor for 10, maybe even 20 years. 10 years, I think, before he actually fought the Jedi Council members and Mace Windu. And I know there's a big discourse around whether Windu actually won that fight or whether Sidious threw that fight, but either way, no matter what you think of the Mace versus Sidious fight, the Yoda versus Sidious fight still exists. And even though he put his lightsaber away during that fight to fall back on his Force abilities, he was going toe-to-toe with the Jedi Grand Master. I mean, I just don't see, and with Sidious's agility, especially the way he flushes his body with the dark side, I just don't see him falling into the trappings that Vader would be able to put him in. I think that if they were to fight, Sidious is so aggressive that he would constantly be having Vader on the defensive, which is where he's weakest.
This duel is so ironic in terms of everything in the context in Star Wars, and especially the duel between Anakin and Obi-Wan. Because I think a lot of people can argue that one of the main reasons Obi-Wan beats Anakin is because of his technique and his approach, not his overwhelming skill in battle. Right. And I think that the roles are sort of reversed. I don't know. I don't want to state your opinion for you, but I think you may agree when I say that purely based on technique alone, Vader is probably the superior to Palpatine. Would you agree? Would you disagree?
That's hard to say. It really is. I feel like if I had some time to do some research, I might be able to give you a better answer. I think Vader has put in more time into his refinement. I might be able to agree with that. I just think that, I don't know.
I would also say that I think we're in agreement when saying that we think Yoda is the superior duelist to Palpatine. Am I correct in that?
We are, yeah, totally.
I think the Revenge of the Sith novel just really hammers that home. The fact that, Palpatine puts his lightsaber away is an active decision because he is not the equal of Yoda at the blade. He's losing. So his decision to put it away is a wise one. So that's just talking about another argument that we're going to have later down the line, because I know a lot of people are waiting for our Yoda versus Vader discussion, because you're very much in favor of Yoda, and I'm very much in favor of Vader. So that's going to be tough. But anyway.
This is going to make me sound like I'm like a anti-Vader. I don't know.
Maybe. If you're anti-Vader, I'll be called a Vader apologist in all the world.
I don't want it to sound like that I think Vader is weak as a duelist in any sense. I just think when comparing him to, the elders, it's difficult to say that he can overcome either one of them.
Let's look at examples in the lore. Let's put opinion aside for a moment, and let's talk about fact. So, Darth Vader's most impressive wins. I think Darth Vader's win over Obi-Wan Kenobi on the first Death Star is one of the most impressive wins. And if you read the novelization for A New Hope, it makes it really clear that Vader is winning that duel. There's no sort of conversation around it's like, Obi-Wan's holding his own. No, Vader is in command. In fact, In the novel, Vader is so shocked how much command he has over the duel about halfway through. He's so shocked how far Obi-Wan has fallen or how far he has grown. I think that's very
Ben Kenobi
impressive.
was very weak.
I also think, Vader's duel with Anya Kuro in Legends continuity. Anya Kuro was one of the best duelists of the Jedi Order. She was one of the best warriors. She escaped Order 66. And that's a long, dragged-out duel that Vader ultimately wins. That's another example. Vader has fought a ton of Jedi at once. And Palpatine has too, but Vader has taken on Jedi that have set traps for him. Palpatine always stacks the odds in his favor, or most of the time. He goes into duels outright knowing he has overwhelming odds of beating them, but Vader doesn't. Vader is hands on sight frequently. Vader will walk into a Jedi trap and he will, go for it and he will win. And that's why, at least in my own head, in my mental scape, Vader and Palpatine are meeting in an open ground. There's no subterfuge going on. This is purely skill with the lightsaber. Sure. So those are really impressive feats from Vader. Vader's killed Jedi Council members. He's killed groups of Jedi. He's entered engagements where they have set traps for him, and he comes out on top. He is the Terminator. Palpatine has to stack odds in his favor at all times. In fact, when he's dueling Yoda, he, attempts to be strategic, pushing him into a corridor where his Ataru is less effective. He is throwing Senate pods at Yoda. It's becoming a confrontation with Force-based abilities alone. And I guess what I'm trying to get at is, what if Palpatine is unable to fall back on that? What if this is purely a contest of the blade? Now, you made a really good point earlier. One of the reasons why Palpatine is really dangerous is because of his insane potential in the Force. Now, we think of that based on Force lightning or being able to, move objects telekinetically. But where Palpatine excels is how he's able to use the dark side to bolster his physical capabilities.
Yes.
Making him faster than Vader, simply because he's using the Force to bolster him so much. There's a passage in Lords of the Sith that I love where Palpatine is forced to run for the first time in many years, and he decides to do so without using the Force, and he's amazed that he's even physically capable of doing that. That's just always been so interesting and comedic to me, that this really is an old, decrepit man, and if you take away the Force, that is what he is. So it's just a matter of what is more advantageous. Is it the technique of Vader, or does Palpatine have the potential to bolster his speed to the point where he can subvert Vader's superior technique? In my opinion. I know you said earlier that you don't necessarily believe that Vader has a superior technique, but in my mind he does. And I have some reasons why, but I'll go ahead and hand it over to you to respond.
Sure. And I'm warming up to the idea of agreeing with you that Vader probably has superior technique. I don't think that's going to be a main point of contention here. For me, if you'll allow me the folly of some ABC logic for a minute, I think
Love
that
it.
Anakin was considered probably the second or third best duelist in the entire order by Revenge of the Sith. I'd say he's probably equal to, if not only a hair less than Mace Windu. So he was able, and becoming Darth Vader, it's kind of easy to see that just kicking off from the Anakin point, he would be able to go ahead and take out most of the Jedi within the order. Let's see. Oh, yeah. And except he meets his match when fighting Obi-Wan. And I'm going to have to use a few strings here because, like you accurately pointed out, Sidious does not have a whole lot of feats as far as the lightsaber goes in the lore, so I'm having to stretch a little bit to make my point. But Obi-Wan finds himself meeting his match, or even overpowered, by Clone Wars Darth Maul and Savage together. And of course, Sidious was able to literally just handle the two of them. And so if we were to say that, an Anakin versus Maul debate, I think that kind of goes in the favor of Anakin. But I feel like that Maul would give him a really good challenge.
Really?
I think so. Yeah.
Which
think
Maul?
So. Clone Wars Maul, I think.
Interesting. See,
Yeah.
I've always taken it as like when Ahsoka says that you're lucky Anakin isn't here because you wouldn't have lasted long. I found myself siding with Ahsoka in that moment. I think Anakin would run through Maul.
I can't see that happening. I know that debate's a little off topic, but I think she was trying to get under his skin because after she pushed him out of the throne room, she was breathing something heavy.
Yeah. I mean, we
Yeah.
also have to... It is impressive that Sidious is able to beat Savage and Maul, but Obi-Wan did it too.
True. I mean, he was... Well, I feel like that's hard to say that he defeated them so much as he was mostly defending himself and just kind of barely doing so at that. And he did end up losing that duel.
When I say defeat, I picture when they're in the hallway and Obi-Wan cuts Savage's arm off and injures Maul's leg, and Maul has to break off the engagement.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair.
That's sort of where I get the idea of like, compete, or like that subsect of the duel. Obi-Wan was victorious.
Sure.
I have a point. I think that something that makes Vader so dangerous is the way that he evolves past Mustafar and his ability to learn. He implements pieces of Sarisu from Obi-Wan and pieces of Makashi or Makashi from Dooku. And those become staples of his hybridized lightsaber form. And he pairs that with Gem So. And before, in our videos, we've always stated before that it's difficult to say Vader uses one specific lightsaber form because that's not correct. He uses a hybridized style of his greatest teachers. He has the Anakin Skywalker Gem So, Sarisu from Obi-Wan Kenobi, and the Makashi from Dooku. Vader evolves. Palpatine gives up. He falls back on his abilities to use the Force, and if he's fighting someone, that is 99% of the time where he's going to put his efforts. So much so that he pretty much stops using his lightsaber altogether after the events of Revenge of the Sith because he's found such success with Force abilities. So what I'm getting at is that Vader loses and he decides to improve his craft. Palpatine loses and he falls back in an area that he thinks he's superior. And I think that that's an important indicator of their mindset.
As a counterpoint, I think that Vader would have a hard time learning from their duel, mostly because I think that there wouldn't be a second duel. And I say that because, as far as I'm aware, I'd have to look, so don't quote me on this just yet, Vader in neither Legends nor canon has fought anyone using Juyo. And that style of Palpatine's that he primarily uses is said to be able to eviscerate the defenses of Sarisu. And in its overwhelmingly aggressive nature and how random it is, it's able to confound the pinpoint accuracy of Makashi. It's like fighting not just a wild animal, but like a force of nature. And I feel like that Vader would have a very hard time rallying himself enough to be able to make a counterattack against Sidious's overwhelming speed, his ferocity, and bolstering himself with the Force internally. Because the way that Sidious works is that he will use that storm of fierce anger and hatred that he keeps within himself, and he'll let it just explode the moment he needs to use it. And when that happens, he's just like a hurricane. In the Revenge of the Sith novelization, it's described when Anakin came in on his duel with Mace, he couldn't even see him. He described him as being just like a whirlwind of just black and red, just a blur. And he's always
that could be attributed to a mental state in part. I've heard that argument before.
Okay, possibly, but I think that there is still the fact that he's just so fast and able to use his internal strength, the force valor idea, that he would be able to contend with Vader's strength. And I think that Vader would have a hard time figuring out what to do with that afterwards, because if he's meeting him blow for blow and driving him backward, Vader's not super great on defense. And I think he would have a hard time getting around that before he's fatally wounded, that his armor's compromised.
I have a point, and this is an interesting point because I think that it's going to 50% support your argument and 50% my argument, truthfully. The only time off the top of my head that I can think of Vader fighting a Juyo practitioner is when he fought the clone of Maul in Legends. He's also fought Galen Merrick, Form 7 as well. So there's two examples.
Oh, did Galen Merrick use Form 7?
Yeah, he did.
Oh, I thought he used him on. Okay, then I stand corrected.
No, but you have a really good point, where in the duel in Legends with Maul and the clone of Maul, so not even Darth Maul, the way that Vader ends up beating him is he stabs himself through the chest while Maul is behind him.
I remember that.
And I think, so the point is, in your favor, Vader's not very good defensively, that even if a clone of Maul could penetrate his defenses. Now, I'm not considering that Prime Vader, by the way.
Sure.
I just want to say that. But the point I would say is Vader has shown before that he is willing to eat attacks if it allows an opening for him to exploit in his enemy. And Malgus does that too. Malgus does that in, I think it's the Deceived novel. Is that what it's called? Yeah. I'd have to. When he fights Venzalo, Malgus makes the decision to eat the elbow to the face to open up his opponent's guard momentarily. And Vader does the exact same thing with the clone of Maul. So I guess my point is Vader doesn't need to necessarily have an impenetrable defense against the overwhelming offense of Palpatine. Vader just needs one good solid opening where I believe that if he can get Palpatine with a really good strike, his durability will crumble, where Vader's cybernetics and his ability to take those hits will ultimately play out in his favor. Now, obviously, we're just talking lightsaber dueling, guys. I think that Palpatine would never get that close. I think that Palpatine would just rather use Force Lightning if it was really competitive. But again, we're operating under the assumption that that's off the table. So that's what I would say. I think Vader would tank a hit, and I think he would attempt to open his opponent's guard in that way.
You know, what's interesting is you say that, and I'm sitting here actually thinking the way Juyo works, one of its biggest weaknesses is that because it's so wild and random and seemingly disconnected, it actually does leave practitioners open for counterattacks if they're not careful. And I feel like that even though Sidious is said to be a master of all 7 forms, I do heavily feel like he would rely on Juyo, knowing that it would be Vader's weakness. And if I were to sit here and play this duel out in my mind, hypothetically, I feel like they would go saber to saber with Vader on the back foot for most of it, until, you're right, he does end up deciding to take that one hit that leaves Palpatine open, and then he kind of rushes in for that big attack that makes Palpatine realize that if he doesn't fatally wound Sidious, then he at least gets close enough to where Palpatine decides to fall back on his Force abilities. So I think it is possible that Vader would win a saber contest, now that I think about it.
You think that he would win?
A contest of sabers? Prime Vader? Yeah. I don't see why he couldn't win.
Oh my goodness. I did not expect that. Okay.
Well, I'm just, I'm looking at the solid facts here. We've went ahead and laid them out, and I mean...
Hey, this is beautiful, because it leaves room for people in the comments down below who don't think that way to interject, their arguments on why they think Palpatine would win. And then, if we get some fire comments, we can come back and do like a part 2 to this.
Absolutely. I might be overlooking something. I'd love for someone to help me out on this one.
I think that we've both reached some middle ground here, which is the beauty of like these discussion and the debates.
Yeah.
I am a Vader and a Sith apologist. I know this.
Oh, yeah.
In my mind, Vader has existed as this Terminator being that can run through people based purely out of grit and hatred and experience and obsessive refinement of lightsaber dueling. And that's how I picture my Vader. And that's why I get really mad when Obi-Wan beats him a second time. But that's that's for a different thing.
Way different topic, yeah.
All right, man. I appreciate you coming back on again. And
absolutely,
to anybody listening, we would love to hear your thoughts down below. This is a good one. You know, these are two of the biggest hitters in all of the lore. And I think that Palpatine's lightsaber technique and his approach to lightsaber combat is so interesting because it's just given to us through little mentions in the Plagueis novel or little glimpses in Clone Wars or glimpses in Revenge of the Sith. So his feats are so much more difficult to pin down than Vader, who at this point has hundreds of feats, hundreds of feats. And Palpatine has
so
less than 10. So props to you for entering an argument knowing that like you didn't have a ton to pull from.
It's I really hope that one day James Luceno gets to do that Palpatine novel he wants to do.
Yes.
For those of you who don't know, James Luceno is the writer of Darth Plagueis, and he has expressed a lot of interest in writing a novel wholly from Palpatine's perspective around the time of the Empire, like the reign of the Empire. And I'm
oh my gosh,
that would be so amazing. Dude, we got all those juicy inside thoughts that Palpatine has. Oh, I would eat that up, dude.
Absolutely. Well, all right, guys. Thank you so much for listening. We'll have more discussions coming your way very soon. Thank you so much again to the Archivist for joining us today. It's been an honor.
Thanks for having me on, as always.
And may the Force be with you, and have a wonderful day.